And it's important to note here, the vast majority of the Palestinians in Gaza are not part of Hamas.
Okay, so what? Nothing he says matters. So what? It's a meaningless point. But the fact that they're not members of Hamas, to the extent that that is true, so what?
When Israel fires rockets at Gaza, it endangers all Palestinians there. Maybe somebody on Twitter could point that out to that guy.
Point what out to that guy? Point what out? I'm dissecting it almost sentence by sentence. I still don't point what out.
To people in Gaza, it can seem like the only time anyone pays attention to what's happening there is when Hamas is firing rockets, which is understandably very frustrating because they've been living under a suffocating blockade.
You know why they're living under a suffocating blockade? Because they want to bring in missiles from Iran to destroy Israel. That's why there's a blockade. If there were no blockade, what do you think would come into Gaza? Girl Scout cookies? Checker games? What do you think would come in? Everything he has said is nonsense.
And in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, Palestinians are essentially being governed by a form of apartheid, an assessment echoed by both international and Israeli human rights groups.
Oh, human rights groups. Oh, they have a record of tremendous moral acuity.
Life in Gaza is hard even when they are not being bombed, and the US government has implicitly co-signed on the brutally hard line Israel's been taking.
Okay, the US has co-signed. When the US supported Israel for the 4 years of Donald Trump, this didn't happen. I'm not saying it is definitely a result of the election of the Democrats in the United States, but it's hard to believe it is not related that within a few months of Joe Biden becoming president, the wars began again.
This guy basically gave Israel a green light to do anything it wanted for the last 4 years, and while Biden has had the opportunity to reset that relationship, his administration's response this week has been deeply underwhelming, giving a generic statement that Israel has a right to defend itself.
Why is that underwhelming? What is Israel supposed to do? He never once, no one on the left who loathes Israel has been able to offer an alternative to what Israel is doing.
Exact same line that Obama said and that Bush said before him. Israel has a right to defend itself is just something all presidents end up saying out loud at some point in office, like my fellow Americans, or what do you mean?
Right, so it's meaningless. Israel has a right to defend itself is a meaningless phrase to this moral giant.
It's not that Israel doesn't have the right to defend itself. It's just that line cannot be used to excuse absolutely everything.
Okay, what is inexcusable?
Multiple children have been killed this week.
Yes, children are killed. That's correct. How could Israel avoid killing children when they are in the same building with Hamas people? What is Israel to do?
8 in a single strike just yesterday, and the US is heavily implicated here. Not just by serving as Israel's diplomatic shield at the UN, but by constantly refusing to criticize the indefensible.
What was indefensible? That's what I'd like to know. That children die? How do you retaliate with no children dying when Hamas uses children as shields? The greatest ally of Hamas is the world media, including John Oliver. If anybody is enabling these things to happen, it is the world's left. God must love these people. He's made a lot of them.